The sun had barely risen over the dusty roadside when Zara unlocked the rusted shutters of her tiny food stall. The same stall she had run for nearly 12 years on the outskirts of a forgotten town. The road beside it stretched endlessly, carrying trucks, travelers, and strangers from places she could only imagine. But hardly anyone ever stopped long enough to learn who she really was. People only saw her as the woman who sold rice plates for cheap. The one who always smiled even when life kept punching her harder each year. She had learned to swallow pain like she swallowed smoke from the fire stove quietly, without letting it show. And every morning, right around the time she began setting her pots on the flame, the boy came. He didn't have a name he shared with her. He didn't ask for anything. He simply stood at a distance, barefoot, his hair tangled like he had slept on the street again, his shirt torn. His eyes deep with hunger, but still carrying a strange softness that Zara couldn't ignore. She started feeding him one morning when he collapsed near her stall, too weak even to say he was starving. She had rushed toward him, poured water into his cracked lips, and given him a warm meal without thinking twice. Since then, every single day he appeared at the same hour, just when her rice began to boil. He would wait for her to gesture, then slowly approach, sit on the same broken wooden crate, and eat quietly. He never asked for seconds. Never asked for anything. He only bowed his head in gratitude before walking away into the dusty emptiness of the roadside fields, as if disappearing into another world. Zara often wondered where he slept, who had abandoned him, what life had stolen from him so early, but she never asked, and he never offered answers. Something about the silence between them felt like a fragile thread neither wanted to break. That morning, however, something felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, and even the birds were unusually restless. Zara glanced around while washing lentils, sensing something approaching, a feeling she couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either. The boy had not come yet. He was late by almost 20 minutes, and that alone filled her chest with unease, because he had never been late. Not even on days when storms flooded the road or when police patrols cleared beggars from the area. She stared at the direction he usually came from, hoping to see the small silhouette that had become a strange comfort in her otherwise lonely life. When he finally appeared, he wasn't walking, he was running, his steps unsteady, his breathing frantic, his eyes wide and darting around as if someone had chased him. Zara immediately wiped her hands on her apron and rushed to him, but he stopped before reaching the stall. He looked at her with fear, the kind of fear that makes a person look much older than they are, and he shook his head as if telling her not to come closer. Zara froze for a moment, trying to understand what danger he was sensing, but he suddenly stumbled toward her, holding his stomach as if he had been hurt. She caught him before he collapsed to the ground, and the shock of how cold his skin felt made her panic rise. He whispered something, just a few broken words, but they were so soft she had to bring her ear closer to hear him. "They found me. Hide," he breathed, before his voice faded into silence. Zara didn't understand who they were, but the trembling of his hands told her that whoever they were, he was terrified of them. Without wasting a second, she dragged him inside her stall. Laying him behind the counter where sacks of rice hid him from anyone passing by, she covered him with a cloth, her hands shaking, but before she could ask anything, he grabbed her wrist weakly, his eyes pleading. "Please, don't let them take me," he whispered. She nodded without thinking, because something deep inside her knew she would protect this child, no matter what danger followed him. She didn't have children of her own. Life had not given her that gift, or perhaps it had been taken from her in ways she still did not allow herself to remember. But this boy, this small starving stranger, had become something like a son she never had. So she promised him silently and stood up just in time to hear the sound of engines approaching, more than one, not the usual trucks or buses. These engines were heavier, deeper, more powerful. Zara stepped outside, shielding her eyes from the rising sun, as she watched a line of black SUVs appear from the distance, speeding down the empty road toward her stall. Her heart pounded. For a moment, she thought they would simply pass by, but as soon as they neared her stall, the first vehicle slowed down sharply. Then another, and another. 3 SUVs stopped right in front of her small stall, their tinted windows reflecting her confused face. Zara felt her breath hitch. She could feel the boy trembling behind the counter, even from where she stood. The doors of the SUVs opened in perfect synchronization, like soldiers in a movie. Men in black suits stepped out, at least 8 of them. Tall, broad, wearing earpieces and sunglasses, even though the sun was barely bright yet. They did not look like normal security officers. They looked like the kind of people who belonged to places she had only heard of in news channels. One man stepped forward, clearly their leader. His face was stern, his jaw clenched, his expensive shoes sinking slightly into the dusty roadside mud. He glanced at her stall, then at her, his expression unreadable. "We're looking for someone," he said in a voice too calm and too controlled. Zara felt her palms sweat. "A child," he continued, "a boy. Small, thin, stray-looking, probably starving." He was seen running this direction. Zara swallowed hard, her heart thumping wildly, but she forced her face to remain still. The man studied her, his eyes sharp behind the sunglasses. Then he stepped closer, so close she could smell the expensive cologne mixed with the dust. "If you're lying," he said quietly, "you will regret it." "Yes." Zara did not flinch. Years of hardship had given her a kind of unbreakable calm. "I'm just a food seller," she said softly. "People pass by every day. I can't keep track." The man stared at her for a long moment, then signaled his team. The men spread out, searching the area around the stall, checking behind the water drums near the wood stacks, even inside the ditch by the road. Zara's heart nearly exploded when one of them began walking toward the back of her stall where the boy was hiding. She stepped in front of him instinctively. "You can't go inside," she said firmly. "That's my kitchen." The man ignored her and tried to push past, but she grabbed his arm, surprising even herself. "I said you can't go in there," she repeated. The leader turned sharply at her raised voice. For a second, Zara thought he would order his men to drag her aside, but instead, he raised his hand to stop them. "Leave it," he commanded. He wouldn't hide there. Too obvious. Zara let out a slow breath she didn't realize she had been holding. After several more tense minutes, the men returned to their SUVs. The leader looked at her one last time. "If you see him," he said, "call this number." He placed a small card on her counter. "It's urgent." For his own good, Zara nodded expressionlessly, though she had no intention of calling anyone. The SUVs raced away in a cloud of dust, their engines fading into the distance. Zara rushed back inside the stall and knelt beside the boy. His eyes were open now, filled with tears he tried to hide. "Why? Why are they after you?" she asked softly, but he only shook his head. "I didn't steal. I didn't do anything," he whispered. "They just want me back." "Back where?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he clutched her hand tightly, his fingers cold and trembling. "Don't leave me," he said. "Please." Zara squeezed his hand gently. "I won't," she whispered. "I promise." But as the day went on and the sun climbed high, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that the danger was far from over. The boy barely ate that day, too scared to touch the food. Zara opened her stall only halfway, pretending to be in the middle of repairs whenever travelers stopped. The boy stayed hidden, but every small noise made him flinch. And Zara realized something: whoever was looking for him wasn't ordinary. They had money, power, influence, and something told her they wouldn't give up easily. Late in the afternoon, when the sky began turning golden, Zara heard a distant sound unlike anything she had heard before. Not trucks. Not buses. Something louder, heavier, slicing the air like a storm. She stepped outside, shading her eyes again. Her heart stopped. 2 helicopters were flying toward her stall, descending lower and lower, kicking up massive clouds of dust as they prepared to land. The boy grabbed her arm from inside the stall, his face drained of color. "They found me," he whispered. Zara stood frozen as the helicopters touched the ground, shaking everything: her pots, her wooden counter, even the earth beneath her feet. She didn't know who was inside, who they were coming for, or what would happen next. But she knew one thing for sure: her life was never going to be the same again. And as the helicopter doors swung open, she felt her heartbeat. echoing so loudly she could barely hear the roar of the blades anymore. To all of you watching this story right now, tell me where in the world you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share because you're about to discover what happened next. The roar of the helicopter blades filled the entire stretch of road as dust swallowed the air, forcing Zara to shield her face as the ground vibrated beneath her feet. The boy clung to her apron from inside the stall, trembling so violently she feared he would faint again. She hadn't expected this, as UVs were one thing, but helicopters landing at her tiny roadside stall felt like something out of a world she did not belong to. She squinted through the dust as the doors of the first helicopter swung open, and out stepped men who did not look like the ones in the SUVs. These weren't rough, intimidating security types. These men wore spotless uniforms, similar to high-ranking military officials. Their expressions were strangely calm, not aggressive or threatening. Behind them stepped a tall woman in a dark gray suit, her hair tied tightly.
Yes.
Her face composed yet shadowed by something like desperation. Her eyes swept over the entire scene before landing directly on Zara's stall. She moved with purpose, as if she already knew exactly what she'd find here. Zara felt panic clawing at her chest as the woman approached, her polished shoes sinking slightly in the dirt. Her officers forming a protective line behind her. "Excuse me?" the woman called out, her tone clear but not harsh. "I'm looking for someone. A young boy. About this tall." She gestured with her hand, and Zara felt the boy behind her flinch even though he couldn't see anything. Zara wiped sweat from her brow and forced her voice to stay steady. "So many people pass here every day," she replied, keeping her eyes neutral. "I don't know which boy you're talking about." The woman didn't look convinced, but she didn't threaten her the way the men in black suits had. Instead, she let out a slow, tired breath, almost like someone at the edge of giving up. "He's very important," she said quietly. "More important than you could imagine. If you've seen him, please. It's a matter of life and death." Zara's stomach churned. She didn't know who to believe, this calm woman or the aggressive men from the SUVs. She didn't know who the boy was running from or who actually wanted to harm him. All she knew was that he had begged her not to let anyone take him. And so she stayed silent. "Ma'am," one of the officers whispered urgently, pointing down the empty road. The woman followed his gaze. Far away, a growing cloud of dust revealed the same black SUVs racing back toward them. The woman's eyes hardened immediately. "We don't have much time," she muttered. "They're coming." Zara felt her heart skip. Who were they? "Listen," the woman said urgently, stepping closer to Zara. "That boy is being hunted. We're not here to hurt him. We're here to take him to safety. Those men," she pointed toward the approaching SUVs. "They want him for reasons you wouldn't understand." Zara hesitated, torn between trust and fear. Before she could respond, the boy suddenly crawled out from behind the counter, his small hands gripping her skirt, his voice trembling. No, don't trust them," he whispered. The woman's eyes widened the instant she saw him. "There you are," she breathed, both relief and sorrow mixing in her voice. "We've been looking for you everywhere." The boy shook his head violently and pressed himself against Zara's leg as if she were the only shield he had in the world. Zara gently placed a hand on his shoulder, then looked back at the woman. "Who are you?" she demanded softly. The woman raised her hands in a gesture of honesty. "My name is Commander Layla Rostam," she said. "I'm part of an international rescue unit." Zara frowned. "Rescue?" "Yes," the woman said urgently. "That boy isn't ordinary. He isn't homeless, and he wasn't abandoned." Zara's breath tightened. She glanced down at the boy, confusion building. "Then who is he?" she whispered. Commander Layla hesitated only a moment before answering. "He's the son of one of the most powerful men in the world." The boy's grip tightened painfully. "No, don't listen. They're lying," he cried. "They want to take me back to that place." Zara knelt so she could look him in the eyes, her hand cupping his cheek. "What place?" she whispered. Tears welled in his eyes, but he shook his head. "A lab," he whispered so faintly she barely heard. "They hurt me. They made me." His voice broke into sobs. Zara felt her blood turn cold. Commander Layla's expression shifted as if she knew exactly what the boy meant. "We didn't hurt him," she said firmly. "We found him after the others escaped with him. We were trying to bring him home safely." The boy shook even harder. "No, she's lying. They all lie." Commander Layla took a small step forward, face softening. "Listen," she said. "He's not just any boy. Something was done to him by people who wanted to use him for experiments. The man claiming to be his father, he funded those experiments. He wants him back to finish what they started. We're trying to protect him from that man." Before Zara could respond, the sound of engines grew louder. The black SUVs were almost there now, speeding toward the helicopters. Commander Layla turned sharply to her officers. "Form a perimeter." The officers moved instantly, creating a defensive line between the stall and the approaching vehicles. Zara's heart hammered as she grabbed the boy's hand. "Tell me the truth," she whispered urgently. "Are you in danger?" The boy nodded so quickly it broke her heart. "They want to use me," he sobbed. "They said I wasn't human enough. They said I was a mistake they could fix." Zara felt tears sting her eyes. Whatever the truth was, one thing was clear. The boy was terrified of going back to whoever had been chasing him. And he trusted her, a roadside food seller he barely knew, more than anyone else. The SUVs screeched to a halt, doors bursting open. The same men in black suits stepped out, weapons drawn, moving like shadows. Zara felt the world explode into chaos. Commander Layla shouted orders. Her officers raised their weapons. The boy screamed and buried his face into Zara's stomach. "Give us the asset." The leader of the black suits roared. "He belongs to us. He's a child, not an asset." Commander Layla shouted back. "You have no legal claim to him. We have authorization from the director himself." The man snapped. "You interfere, you die." Zara's knees went weak as the standoff intensified. She didn't know who to trust, who was lying, or who was manipulating the situation. All she knew was that she couldn't let the boy be taken by people who called him an asset. Suddenly, chaos erupted. One of the black-suited men raised his weapon and fired a warning shot into the air. Commander Layla's officers responded instantly, and for a moment Zara felt the world dissolve into flashing metal. Shouting voices, and the terrifying realization that people were willing to kill over this boy. The boy grabbed her arm. "Run," he begged. "Please, Zara, run with me." Without thinking, she pulled him toward the back of the stall where a narrow stretch of field lay open. Bullets sliced through the trash cans, splintering wood as she sprinted with him. Her heart pounding so loudly she couldn't hear anything else. "Keep going," Commander Layla shouted behind them. Zara didn't look back. She ran across the dry field, stumbling through weeds, the boy panting beside her. She didn't know where they were going. She only knew they had to get away. A helicopter blade roared again, and she looked up to see one of the aircraft rising slowly, positioning itself above them. For a moment, she thought they were targeting her. But then she saw the helicopter was trying to shield them by hovering low and blocking the view of the black-suited men. Commander Layla must have ordered it. Zara dragged the boy toward a cluster of tall grass near the edge of a dried-out canal. They crouched inside, breathless, trembling, watching the chaos unfolding near the stall. "Zara," the boy whispered, grabbing her hand again. "Thank you." For the first time since she'd met him, he looked like a child, not an experiment, not an asset, not a running fugitive. Just a scared, fragile boy who had never known a moment of safety. Zara brushed the hair off his forehead and whispered, "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." But even as she said it, she saw something that made her heart drop. A third helicopter, one she hadn't noticed, was approaching from behind the hills, flying low, fast, and directly toward their hiding spot. And this one wasn't trying to protect them. Its entire side was painted in the same black hand-silver emblem as the SUVs. The boy saw it too. His face went pale. "Zara," he whispered. "They found us again." The helicopter tilted, descending toward them, loud enough to drown out even their fear. Zara grabbed him tighter as wind blasted dirt into their eyes. She had no idea how to escape this time. No idea what these people truly wanted. No idea who the boy really was. But she knew one thing: this was far from over. The wind blasted against them as the third helicopter descended, its roar swallowing every other sound as Zara shielded the boy with her body, her heart pounding so violently she thought it might burst through her chest. The ground shook as the helicopter's skids touched down in the dried-out canal bed, dust swirling around them like a storm. Before Zara could pull the boy deeper into the grass, the side door slid open, and a man stepped out tall, commanding. With a presence so intimidating, the air seemed to tighten around him. His suit was darker than night, perfectly tailored, and even from a distance, Zara could feel the coldness radiating from him. The boy's entire body stiffened, as if every memory he had been running from had suddenly materialized in front of him. "That's him," the boy whispered, barely breathing. "The director." The man surveyed the field calmly, his eyes sharp as blades, until they locked onto the trembling figure of the boy hiding behind Zara. In an instant, his expression softened not in kindness, but in something far more controlled and manipulative. "Ilion," he called, his voice smooth like polished steel. "You've caused quite a search." Zara froze. Elian. So that was the boy's name. The director stepped forward, two heavily armed guards following behind him. "Come now," the man said, with chilling gentleness. "You frightened everyone." "You belong with me?" "You know that." Ilian shook violently, gripping Zara's arm with desperate strength. "Don't let him take me," he begged, tears streaming down his cheeks. Zara rose to her feet, positioning herself between the director and the boy, even though her legs trembled. "Who are you to him?" she demanded, her voice cracking. The director smiled faintly. "His father." Elion let out a broken sob. "No, he's not. He's lying. He only made me." The director raised his hand, silencing the boy instantly, not by force, but with a terrifying familiarity that made Zara's skin crawl. "He is a child created under my guardianship," the director said calmly. "Not born. Not adopted. Designed. Engineered." Zara's stomach twisted. "Engineered." The director nodded. The world needed a mind like his, a prototype with intelligence far beyond human limits. A child who could predict patterns, solve global crises, stop wars before they begin. But he escaped before the final phase of integration. Lian shook his head, clutching Zara's clothes. "Integration means killing me," he whispered. "They want to put something in me. A machine. To control my brain." Zara felt horror flood her veins. The director's eyes hardened. "He is malfunctioning. Confused. He ran because fear is an unpurged human defect. He belongs with us, not out here feeding off charity at roadside stalls." Zara's blood boiled. "He's not a defect," she snapped. "He's a child." The director stepped closer, the cold wind from the helicopter blades whipping through his hair. "He is an invention," he corrected. "A multi-billion-dollar investment. And you, madam, are interfering with property you cannot begin to understand." Zara wanted to scream at him. But before she could speak, the other two helicopters from Commander Layla's team rose into the air again. Commander Layla's voice echoed across the field through a megaphone. "Director Morrow, step away from the child immediately." The director didn't flinch. The guards around him raised their weapons as Commander Layla's forces moved in from behind the dried canal, surrounding the director's men in a tightening circle. The tension rippled through the air like electricity. Elian clung to Zara as if she were the only living thing that could save him. Zara felt something inside her shift, something maternal, something she'd buried years ago after losing her own unborn child in a tragedy she never dared revisit. She wrapped her arm around Elian, her voice steady for the first time. "You're not taking him." The director gave a small, chilling smile. "You think you can stop me? You're a roadside food seller," maybe Zara said. "But right now, I'm the only one standing between you and that boy." "Hey?" The director's smile twisted into annoyance. "Enough." He snapped his fingers, and his guards moved forward. Commander Layla shouted, and her officers spread out, forming a defensive barrier. The air shook with the tension of two forces ready to collide. Suddenly, a shot rang, outfired by one of the director's guards, toward Commander Layla's team. Zara dropped to the ground with Elian as bullets sliced through the grass. Commander Layla's troops retaliated immediately. The sound of gunfire echoed through the field, helicopters circling overhead like vultures. Zara crawled with Elian toward a nearby patch of thick bushes, her breath ragged. "Stay low," she whispered. "Don't look back." Elian nodded, tears streaming down his face, dirt streaking his cheeks. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I know," Zara said, "but you're not alone." When they reached the bushes, Zara peeked through the leaves. Commander Layla's men were outnumbered, but they fought fiercely, trying to push the director's guards backward. The director himself calmly walked through the chaos, untouched, his eyes locked on Elian. "He will be mine," he said quietly, as if speaking to the wind. Zara grabbed a broken metal rod lying near the canal and stepped out just enough to confront him. "You're not touching him," she yelled. The director tilted his head. "Do you know what happens if he stays with you?" Zara tightened her grip on the rod. "He lives." "He dies," the director corrected. "His mind is collapsing without the stabilizer we built. He was designed with enhancements, but they deteriorate without recalibration. The longer he stays out here, the more pain he will suffer." Elian whimpered, clutching his head. Zara's heart raced. "Is that why he fainted earlier?" she whispered. The director nodded. "Yes. His brain is rejecting the overload. He is too advanced to survive in chaos. He needs the completion procedure." Elian shook violently. "No, they'll erase me. They'll turn me into something else." Zara knelt beside him, her hands shaking. "What happens if they finish the procedure?" "His memories will be wiped." Commander Layla shouted as she dodged a bullet and ran toward them. "He'll become a tool. A weapon shaped like a child." Zara felt as though the world had stopped spinning. The director's voice sliced through the air. "Give him to me, or he dies here." Zara looked at Elian, this fragile, terrified boy she'd fed every morning. The child who thanked her with bowed eyes, the boy who trusted her when he trusted no one else. She had no weapons, no power, nothing but a mother's instinct she thought she had lost. She stood up slowly, placing herself between Elian and the director again. "If he dies," she said, "he dies free. Not in your cage." Director's eyes darkened. "Then so be it." He raised his hand and aimed a small, sleek device at Elian's, something that glowed faintly blue. At that same instant, Commander Layla lunged forward, shouting, "Zara, get down!" A deafening blast of wind erupted from above. One of Commander Layla's helicopters swooped down, angling itself between Zara and the director. A spotlight blinded the field as a rope dropped from the helicopter, swinging wildly. "Zara, Elian, grab the rope," Commander Layla shouted. Zara grabbed Elian's hand and ran toward the rope as bullets ripped through the grass around them. She grabbed it and tied it around Elian's waist while the helicopter strained to rise. "Hold on," she cried. The helicopter lifted, pulling Elian upward as he screamed and clung to Zara's arm. Zara held on with everything she had until she felt her grip slipping. "Zara," he cried. "Don't let go. I'm right here," she shouted, tightening her grip. But a stray bullet hit the ground near her foot, and the shock made her hand slip just an inch enough to loosen her hold. Commander Layla reached them in time, grabbing Zara's arm with one hand and pushing her upward toward the rope. "Both of you go," she yelled. Zara grabbed the rope, wrapping her arm around Elian, while the helicopter lifted them higher and higher. Below them, the director watched, his expression unreadable. His guards retreated as Commander Layla's forces pushed forward. The helicopter carried Zara and Elian away from the chaos, higher into the sky until the ground became distant and quiet again. Elian buried his face into her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Zara held him close, whispering, "You're safe. I promise." Hours later, after they were flown far from the battleground, Commander Layla approached them in a remote, safe facility. She knelt in front of Elian and spoke softly. "You'll never go back to him. We're taking you somewhere safe, somewhere he can't reach you." Elian looked up at Zara first, needing her reassurance more than anything. She brushed his hair back and smiled. "You're going to live a real life now, she whispered. Not in a lab. Not as an experiment. As a child? And for the first time since she met him, Ilian smiled, a small, fragile smile, but a real one. Commander Layla stood and looked at Zara with deep respect. You saved him, she said. Out of everyone in the world, he trusted you. Zara looked at the boy she had fed every morning, her heart swelling. He saved me too, she whispered. And as the sun rose over their new horizon, Ilian slipped his small hand into hers, no longer trembling. He was no longer alone. He was no longer hunted. He was finally home. And Zara, the roadside food seller who had fed a lonely boy out of kindness, had become the woman who changed his destiny forever.